triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drive the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Morant. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. Yeah, I need it now. Told him on the lay. I've been moving, dog. Yeah, I'm on the way. I don't hear the talk. Don't care what they say. I don't got no patience. I can't ever wait.
What a roller coaster ride Anthony Davis's Dallas Mavericks debut was, specifically for Mavericks fans. The first half was an incredible display of fireworks. In fact, what I would say was the most dominant half of Anthony Davis's career. He was nothing short of spectacular. Every single shot he put up, it felt like was dropping, and if it didn't, he was probably putting it back himself and taking care of business on the glass, protecting the rim on the defensive end of the floor, assisting the basketball at a rate that we haven't ever seen from Anthony Davis himself offensively. His offensive involvement was incredible, and I think with his overall shot making that he displayed in the first half, the defensive profile that we know Anthony Davis to be as an elite defender, it was all Mavericks fans could wish for after trading franchise icon Luka Doncic away to the Los Angeles Lakers. The American Airlines Center was roaring. Anthony Davis and the Dallas Mavericks were soaring against the Houston Rockets. Now, the second half wasn't quite as sunshine and rainbows as the first half was, but I do think this game gave us a lot of good indications on what this Mavericks team is going to look like. If they're healthy, that's a huge if, of course, since Anthony Davis did miss the duration of the fourth quarter with an injury, an apparent injury on a non-contact play to his groin. Now, we don't have a ton of news yet at the time I'm recording this. If we do get news, comment that down in the comment section so that everyone knows what's going on with Anthony Davis, as he might already be missing some time with the Dallas Mavericks. But again, there was a lot to love. I think we have a good idea of what this team's going to look like. So if you guys do enjoy this video, this film study breakdown on Anthony Davis's debut in Dallas, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I think one of the best places to start here is this two-man game between Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. We didn't get to see it a ton here, but in the second quarter with about 5 minutes to go, there's a little drag screen set here in early transition. Anthony Davis gets a solid rub hit here on Jalen Green, putting Kyrie Irving down in an empty pick and roll. You see the opposite side of the floor, the weak side, is loaded with Klay Thompson in the corner, and Mavericks spread out across the break and the left side wing, giving Anthony Davis the entire middle of the floor to roll downhill. And Kyrie Irving does a great job throwing the ball up here on a platter for Anthony Davis. The Rockets took a timeout here. This was a 20-point lead at this point of the game as Dallas was dominating early. Now we go to another pick and roll set a couple minutes later here in the second quarter. But this is where Anthony Davis separates himself from traditional rolling big men, right? Obviously, Davis a better facilitator. Davis more coordinated, more athletic, has a better center of balance. He's a little bit better in pretty much every single area than your traditional big man. And one of those other areas where he's great at is his shooting ability. Now, let's be honest about it. Across all NBA players, if we're factoring in guards and wings and forwards, Anthony Davis is an extremely poor high-volume jump shooter. But for a big man, he has a survivable ability to stretch the floor for his position grouping, for his overall size, height, defensive profile. You think about players who are 6'10" or taller, protect the rim at the level Anthony Davis does. There's not a large number of them who shoot the ball as well as Anthony Davis does, even though in the grand scheme of the NBA, he's not the best shooter. This is something that the Mavericks will be able to go to here. This time, Amen Thompson and Chase, Alperen Şengün in deep drop, and Anthony Davis sets his feet, lets it fly, and like I said earlier, he wasn't missing anything in his Dallas Mavericks debut. I also thought it was very interesting with the way Dallas utilized Anthony Davis on the basketball, something that in his tenure with Los Angeles, one, he didn't have the size around him. He didn't have the shooting around him with the Lakers. And while LeBron James is arguably the greatest player of all time, LeBron has a certain style of play that at points maybe limits or kind of puts certain players in a box on what they're expected to do. And that's not a negative. LeBron James has won so much in his career that I think you can look at that as a positive thing, but it doesn't allow players to expand their wings, grow themselves as much And I think here in Dallas now with Luka Doncic gone and Anthony Davis in, the Mavericks, if AD is healthy, are going to significantly rely on him to be a creator of their offense. Here after a little bit of a screen off, getting Kyrie Irving over to the corner on the right side, now we have what is called 45 action. It's your 4, which is Anthony Davis, the power forward in this setting, with Daniel Gafford coming up and setting a screen as the 5. Now Amen Thompson goes under this screen. But again, Anthony Davis, with his skill set, is comfortable taking and skilled enough to make these kinds of shots. Had a very, very good day. You see him flexing the signature celly there, letting people know in the American Airlines Center how good, how skilled he is. And this is not something Dallas just did once or twice. They did this on multiple occasions. Here's another one in what is almost 51 action, if you want to title it that, with Anthony Davis here playing the 5 in this lineup grouping with PJ Washington, Najee Marshall, Klay Thompson, and Kyrie Irving on the court. Kyrie Irving sets an inverted ball screen, and you see Anthony Davis able to make a read out of that. Now, nothing materializes on the kick to the left side corner, but nonetheless, AD gets to work, gets the bucket to go. And then later on here, again, you're seeing almost a horns action. Now, Anthony Davis, again, doesn't have anything materialize out of this, but instantly flows into being a screener himself, dives hard to the rim. Klay Thompson's able to get it to go. So I think Dallas showcased the willingness, the ability to use Anthony Davis as a ball handler, someone who's going to be receiving screens, but then also the ability to pivot back into screening himself. And I think the dynamics between the Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis two-man game, which we talked about earlier, Anthony Davis being an on-ball player, creating for his teammates and himself out of the pick and roll, specifically with Daniel Gafford, is probably, I think, the headliner of discussion here. One thing that Anthony Davis brings to Dallas that they just simply did not have before with Luka Doncic was this rim force, this rim pressure. Now, obviously, you think back to last year's Western Conference Finals, the Mavericks slaughtered the Minnesota Timberwolves on alley-oop after alley-oop after alley-oop, and that came from Luka Doncic getting 2 feet in the paint touches, playing out of drives, playing out of the pick and roll game. And the Mavericks historically have had success putting the ball in Luka Doncic's hands in the low post, in the mid post, but it's not to this kind of degree in terms of the rim force. Obviously, Luka is not the kind of athlete that Anthony Davis is. Luka's a few inches shorter, obviously has a few less inches on his vertical as well. And this is just a kind of force and dynamism and dominism that they just did not have before. Anthony Davis, again, first half specifically, could not miss. Now, I still do have flaws. We'll talk about those. This is probably my favorite play of the game, and it was the very first play of Anthony Davis's tenure with the Dallas Mavericks. After setting a wide pin screen for Klay Thompson, catches in the post against Jalen Green, obviously a huge mismatch. Alperen Şengün immediately comes to double. Amen Thompson is late in rotation. This is a wonderful lob alley-oop pass here to Daniel Gafford, and once you put the ball up there by the rim, Gafford, Derek Lively, when he's back, those kind of guys know what to do with the basketball in those situations. And again, here now Anthony Davis as a screener, first trying to manipulate matchups here. You see Houston willingly switches here. Now Cam Whitmore is on Anthony Davis, and this is where AD has the ability to eat. You get certain matchups. This is where he's going to dominate. Cam Whitmore just a little bit too small. The Rockets, of course, have been reeling as of late now, losers of 6 straight games. The Jabari Smith absence, and of course Fred VanVleet in this one as well, I do think kind of impacted the way the Rockets would have maybe tried to defend some of this stuff. But overall, the biggest takeaway here was the absolute domination that was Anthony Davis. He was just brilliant in the mid post. He was brilliant with his back to the basket, and he was brilliant as a force attacking the rim as well in this game. And I think for Mavericks fans, if you're hoping and optimistic about Anthony Davis, the Mavericks team going forward, this is something that will be integral for the Mavericks offense. Finding ways to keep Anthony Davis involved, finding ways to make him a real force in the NBA. And I think specifically when it comes to things or ways that I want to see the Mavericks continue to utilize Anthony Davis going forward, it will really stem from play calling. I think going to more of those 45 actions or delays or inverted pick and rolls, finding ways to put Anthony Davis on the basketball in advantage situations, whether that be through ball screens or putting him in the mid post, drawing up ways to scheme him the basketball. I think the one concern I have for Dallas specifically, especially with Jason Kidd being the head coach, Jason Kidd always does a great job of getting the defense prepared. The offense sometimes lacks a little bit of creativity. I think with Dallas specifically, they always kind of have that fallback option of Luka Doncic being such a great isolation scorer. They don't have that anymore. So when the game slows down and it gets tough, and I think we saw this in the third quarter, what ways are you going to scheme the ball to your best players? Is that Kyrie Irving being an isolation guy? And if that's the case, you've lowered your ceiling because Kyrie Irving's just not as good as Luka Doncic. But if it's ways to get Anthony Davis the ball, if it's Anthony Davis running inverted action, if it's Anthony Davis running 45 action, if it's Anthony Davis posting up and getting cutters off of him or kind of flowing into dribble handoff, something we didn't see a ton today, but I think could be something that is a possibility with Klay Thompson or Kyrie in the future. There are ways for Dallas to positively grow offensively out of this, but again, I think that requires some creativity. And I think on the topic of creativity, I have to highlight Jason Kidd here, who did a tremendous job with the matchups in this one. Specifically when Amen Thompson was on the court, Anthony Davis was primarily, quote-unquote, guarding Amen Thompson. Now, guarding him mostly meant sagging off of him, being a low-man helper, being very active on the defensive glass and around the rim as a helper. And those things are exactly what Dallas needs, and I think that's very brilliant coaching. If you look at what Dallas's scheme was defensively last year en route to an NBA Finals appearance, it really hinged on low-man help, disrespecting the weak side corner. You're going to be okay with kickouts, and you're going to hard close out from there. I think against certain matchups, and Houston being one that I think really helps Dallas kind of in this matchup specifically because the Rockets are such a poor three-point shooting team, Dallas really could play their cards open. They could play their kind of scheme here. Everyone knew what was coming, and yet the scheme kind of works against a team like Houston who can't shoot it very well. Now against Boston, a team that has 5 elite three-point shooters on the court almost at all times, that presents different challenges, right? But I think with Anthony Davis's activity here defensively, his switchability, and I think this clip here specifically, we have Daniel Gafford now switching onto Jalen Green and Anthony Davis willingly switching onto Alperen Şengün. This is the kind of switchability that the Mavericks have not had as much, and I think this is one of the benefits of playing Anthony Davis with a center, something that, again, he's been kind of begging for in Los Angeles. The success here gets a huge block on Alperen Şengün, which leads immediately into a trigger into fast break. PJ Washington gets all the way to the rim. The Mavericks set a season high in blocks on the year in this game, and it's not a surprise. Anthony Davis's effort, his ability, and then of course going from those to triggering into transition. I think for Dallas, if you're looking for ways to create offensive opportunities, this is going to be one of your most advantageous situations. I think this play specifically goes back to what I was talking about with schematics. Here he is early in the game guarding, quote-unquote guarding Amen Thompson, and as Alperen Şengün here takes an inverted action, ball goes back out to Jalen Green. Now you're getting your standard 25 pick and roll here. Daniel Gafford's able to almost put his body completely on Jalen Green because Anthony Davis is going to be there as a helper, forces Jalen Green to give it up. Now Amen Thompson's not comfortable shooting, and even though it's a good look for Alperen Şengün, Anthony Davis's presence is really felt. I want to play this clip one more time because I think this is a real testament to what Anthony Davis can be on the defensive end as not only a rim deterrent as a helper, but also an intimidator, someone who is going to force more misses than what Dallas is accustomed to. And then you factor in Daniel Gafford's rim protection. You factor in PJ Washington's athleticism, who started kind of quote-unquote at small forward today. You figure, Derek Lively comes back hopefully at some point either this season or for the playoffs. The Mavericks have so much size, length, and athleticism that they're going to be a stifling defense, specifically when Anthony Davis is at the 4. But at the 5, I do have some concerns in these clips here of the Rockets utilizing the dunker spot specifically when Anthony Davis was the 5. The Mavericks, even though they have so much size and length in their front court, and this is something that maybe doesn't happen as much when Derek Lively is healthy, it happened today with Lively not in the game in the moments that Daniel Gafford was out and that the Mavericks relied on Davis to be their center, their sole, real true big man on the court. Because when Anthony Davis is directly involved in the pick and roll, that means he's not directly at the rim. And the lack of size, Najee Marshall, a good defender, he's not the biggest defender in the world. Even though PJ Washington has good size, he's not the most natural helper where he's going to be able to protect the rim and cut off a short roll like you saw in Alperen Şengün there. And I think in some of these other clips as well, when it comes to Anthony Davis at the 5, here the Rockets are attacking him. Now, Şengün doesn't really get a good hit, but Dinwiddie still gets beat off the dribble. Davis did not commit to helping. And I can't really blame him here. There wasn't a good screen set, but Davis was not extremely mobile in this situation. I think, again, if you have him as the 4, he's going to be more apt to be able to help off of non-shooters. And then, unfortunately, this is the play where he does get hurt. You see him grab at his groin here on what appeared to be a no-contact, non-contact injury. Of course, a huge dunk for Alperen Şengün, and there goes Anthony Davis walking off on what was a very tough injury and one that you just hate to see, especially in a very, very strong debut for the Dallas Mavericks. Honestly, a huge disappointment with how his first game in Dallas actually ended. So when it comes to my overall thoughts, first of all, I thought there was a lot to love about Anthony Davis's debut. Now, obviously, Mavs fans should be concerned. Injuries, they've kind of plagued Anthony Davis through different stretches of his career. For the most part, he has been relatively healthy in Los Angeles. But you think back to his New Orleans days, small stretches of his Lakers days, and now very early in his Mavs tenure, missed the first 2 games that he was eligible for that Max Christie played in because of injury. Now does not complete his actual first debut game here in Dallas either, so that is a red flag. But I did love the overall 2-man game between him and Kyrie Irving, even though we didn't get to see it a ton. I was still very, very impressed with the pick and whatever, whether it's pick and roll, pick and short roll, pick and pop, pick and delayed roll, whatever you want it to be, it's going to be really, really good and really dynamic because of AD's overall skill set. I thought the mid-post was a really strong emphasis for Dallas coming into this game, especially against Houston with some of the guys they were missing. I think they exercised that area of the court extremely well in this win. And then I think specifically look at how Anthony Davis's facilitation stood out. Something, again, that in Los Angeles, without a true center next to him for a majority of his Lakers tenure, especially the last couple of years, without the shooting around him, I think his passing really stood out to me. You think about, the Spencer Dinwiddie three-pointer that he assisted, the lob earlier that we talked about to Daniel Gafford as well. I did like the idea of the defensive switchability. Now, it's not something I want the Mavericks to fall in love with, but having that as a potential option is, of course, extremely fun. Again, I did not love, one of my biggest things here, I did not love the Anthony Davis at the 5, solely him being the only big man on the court, because, again, I just think it minimizes what his potential defensive impact can be as a roamer. You think about matchups with Oklahoma City on Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein. You think about matchups against Denver where he could be super effective sagging off of Aaron Gordon, just like we saw the Minnesota Timberwolves do last year with Rudy Gobert defending Aaron Gordon, quote-unquote defending Aaron Gordon, and Karl Anthony Towns being the primary matchup on Nikola Jokic. I think Dallas is kind of copying that homework here. You put Gafford, you put Lively on Jokic for the 48 minutes, and you let Davis be the roamer off of Aaron Gordon. You dare Aaron Gordon to beat you as a shooter. I think that's going to be a very successful recipe for Dallas if they do get into a potential playoff matchup with some of the top dogs in the Western Conference. Like I mentioned, specifically Denver, OKC, those are the ones you need the size against. And I think if Anthony Davis is healthy, if Lively's back healthy, and Gafford's also giving them 20 good minutes a game, the Mavericks have a real successful recipe with lineup versatility. But again, straying away from Davis being the 5 for long stretches is my preferred kind of point right now, because I just did not love the matchup with him on Şengün, the kind of options it gave Houston using Şengün as a screener and a roller, specifically as a short roller. And then I think one other thing for me, and this is just kind of a general note, and one thing I mentioned earlier this week when the trade happened, Anthony Davis, the shot volume from 10 feet plus, 8 feet to 21 feet roughly, where they're non-three-pointers, a bunch of long twos, kind of settle sometimes. You get to the mid-post. Now listen, in game 1 of his Mavericks career, he was tremendous and making a ton of these looks. I do have concerns, though, about the misses and the volume of misses and how frequently those things could potentially haunt Dallas, because one, it's just not an effective form of offense. Like I mentioned earlier, in the grand scheme of the NBA, he's not an effective jump shooter compared to the best jump shooters, the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders of the world. So you get into a playoff series with OKC, even though I think you have the matchups to deal with OKC in a way, I do think when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, the Thunder have the best player in the series, and it's particularly not close now at this point in time. So I think that's going to be a real challenge here for Dallas going forward. But all in all, I did love the early results here. Anthony Davis had the most dominant half of his career and one of the most dominant halves, honestly, ever in terms of the statistical profile, the defensive impact. He was just off the charts, rebounded the ball really well. So Mavericks fans, not all hope is lost here. We're praying now that Anthony Davis is healthy. I still do not love the trade. I'll be completely honest. I don't, from a 7 to 10 year perspective. Trading away a 25-year-old Luka Doncic will never be rationalized to me. I do not understand that still. But Anthony Davis is a top 15 player in the world. We can't overlook his overall individual greatness either. And this Mavericks team is still put together in a way that can be very, very competitive. Even if they don't come out of the West or win the NBA Finals this year, they're still a really good team, and I think they have to be respected as such. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.